Let's talk about a topic that's as old as time. Not really. Just, it tends to grind people's gears in this community. Designer versus niche. What is worth owning? What's worth money? Why is niche so expensive? Why is designer so cheap? Etc. So on. Is there a middle ground? Tim, what do I do? Oh my god, oh my god, oh my god. What's worth the money? What's worth it? Is it worth it? Let me work ya. Shout out Missy Elliott. So designer versus niche is a tale as long as a rat's, I guess. Not very long at all. It's just a topic that seems to be frequented in the YouTube community. And so I thought that I would touch base with my thoughts on it. My thoughts are exactly this. There's wonderful designer fragrances. There's wonderful niche fragrances. There's shit designer fragrances. There's shit niche fragrances. And there's the same for the in-between as well. Indie fragrances, mid-range designer fragrances, mid-range niche fragrances, etc., so on and so forth. There's brands that suck, there's brands that don't suck. It's up to you as the consumer. What is important to you per category of fragrance? Now, for me in particular, what sells me on a fragrance? The smell. So some people really have to have a good presentation if they're spending more than, $100 or whatever. I've found in time that there are plenty of fragrances that I thoroughly enjoy that I don't care so much for their packaging or their bottle design or whatever the case may be. And I can give you some examples of that if you would like. I'm not particularly fond of, say, the new Prada L'Homme bottle. I actually really think, even though the faux leather and all that is really nice and the cap is pretty nice, the actual part where it says Prada kind of looks like shit on the bottle. But I love that fragrance, and it's not too expensive, so it doesn't bother me. Brands such as Dior and Chanel kind of know exactly what they're doing when it comes to both design and smell. They have timeless bottles, I feel like. Tom Ford has timeless bottles. With the exception of his the Noir line, where the caps are about as cheap feeling as it gets, that plastic hollow bullshit for a fragrance that you're spending $100 and over on is kind of ridiculous. So I feel like sometimes I do get a bit perturbed about those kinds of things, those little details. But at the end of the day, if the fragrance smells amazing, I don't really care. I'm gonna pick it up based off of the scent, and is the scent worth the cash that I'm paying? But as far as designer versus niche, I don't really believe that there's an argument. I don't believe that there's an argument that should and or could exist within the confines of is one better than the other? Does one have the upper hand to the other? I think the answer is no. There's been plenty of cases where there's been designer fragrances that have blown me out of the water, that have just been just as quality, if not more quality, been at a decent price point. And some of these examples that I could give you are Dior Homme Intense, when it first came out, the vintage version. Dior Fahrenheit Parfum is incredible. Guerlain L'Homme Intense, Koros, Chanel's Egoist. These are fragrances that to this day blow me away. They're amazing. They're artistic and they're people pleasers at the same time. And more importantly, the quality of the juice is there. Koros isn't a people pleaser. Sorry about that. That's 100% a fragrance that is off the fucking walls insane. But the rest of them, they can have the best of both worlds. Now, if you're particularly in the game for art, then maybe you are only looking for niche fragrances that are artistic, such as Etat Libre d'Orange Secretions Magnifique, okay? Nobody wears that because they think that they feel like they just smell great. I feel, maybe there are a few people out there, but with a fragrance like that is just so incredibly insane to smell like all these things like semen and shit and blood and whatever else that they got going on in that fragrance. That's obviously it's a niche within a niche, someone who is looking for fragrances based off of an artistic interpretation of something. Then we have obviously other uses of a fragrance, like do you just want a fragrance per season for your collection, like one per season, one for fall, one for winter, one for spring, one for summer, you're done. And they all have to be mass appealing, or they all have to be subtle, or they all have to be this or that or the other thing. So it's really up to you as a consumer to decide what is most important for you. And I will tell you that for me in particular, I have taken a couple hiatuses from this whole journey. And I will tell you some of the fragrances that I've used on these hiatuses of 6 months to a year that I've done throughout the years in these little bursts. Some of the fragrances that I took on as being my signature scent. Tom Ford Costa Azura, I used for a year straight. That's all I bought. That and, well, for my warmer weather, fall, spring, summer, warmth, like basically 60 degrees and up. And then I used New Harlem for the colder weather. Those were the only 2 fragrances that I owned for a year. Then I came back to reviewing again, and basically, that went out the window. I used those 2. They did their job because I was looking for fragrances that I adored that also were people pleasers, and they did their jobs. And to this day, I adore both fragrances. And then I came back and I wanted more of a variety. I don't tend to purchase fragrances that are just way off the wall anymore. I would never, at this particular point in my life, I guess I shouldn't say never, I wouldn't purchase a Kouros right now. I wouldn't purchase a Mona de Orio's Cure. I wouldn't purchase some of these fragrances based off the fact that I don't feel like I could wear them other than in my own home. And it's not that I need people to like what I'm wearing, it's that I want people to like what I'm wearing, because I'm in such a restricted space for most of the day. I'm either at work or I'm in a classroom. So I feel like it's rude of me to suddenly come in with this bombastic smelling fragrance that fills up the room and people are being choked out. That being said, I don't really care that people may not like the scent if I enjoy it. It's just the fact that I'm being courteous that they are fragrances that tend to project in just incredibly animalic, maybe really unappealing to most people. Those are fragrances that I feel like I have to enjoy on my own, in my own space. And being at this particular moment in my life, I get very little time to myself. That's just not something that I reach towards as much anymore. I will reach towards fragrances that are otherwise difficult for people to pull off as far as gender goes. I love my Black Orchid. I love my Angelique Noir. Those are fragrances that I feel like a lot of men don't feel comfortable wearing, that I could care less about. I think that they're mass appealing enough. They're out there a little bit, but they're mass appealing enough as far as this overall scent goes. But maybe people are like, well, you smell kind of girly, whatever. I could give a shit about that. But as far as fragrances go, is the way that I approach it for niche versus designer, I see there's nothing there. There's nothing there for me. They're all intermingled as just a category of fragrance. Fragrance doesn't meet my needs. The end. Do I own fragrances like in the designer realm that are just literally there for mass appealing? Of course I do. Of course I do. Because to me, fragrance isn't just about me. Fragrance is about the people that I care about, the people that I spend my time with, and or just people that I end up being around based off of the nature of being in a retail job and being in school still. I want people to enjoy that interaction with me, I guess, just as much as I enjoy it for a lot of the time. And so I do wear things like Bleu de Chanel. I do wear things like Dior Sauvage. Do I adore Dior Sauvage? No. But I like it enough to buy it. I enjoy it. I think that it's a really good fragrance as far as like compliments. I don't care about compliments, but I think it's a good fragrance as far as appealing to the masses in that particular circumstance that I would need to do that. Bleu de Chanel, I actually adore Bleu de Chanel. Allure Homme Sport, those aren't fragrances that are meant to be pieces of art. They're fragrances that are meant to be, you smell good, you smell fresh, you smell clean, someone's going to enjoy it, somebody's going to ask you what you're wearing, and then they themselves are going to want to purchase something like it. And that's part of the journey for me as well. I love being able to be a source of knowledge for people so that they themselves can then upgrade their grooming ability. That is fun to me. I love that stuff. There's those fragrances, and then of course I do own some bombastic ones as well. But at this particular moment, again, I purchase fragrances based off of their smell, and the price point doesn't really bother me so much as long as it's meeting all the needs that I need for a fragrance to meet. In short, it's up to you as a consumer to decide what it is that you feel is important. If you could never see yourself purchasing a bottle that's over $100, I totally understand that. I get that. And there are plenty of fragrances in the designer world that actually are creative masterpieces that you can find for $50. So you don't necessarily need to jump into the world of niche if you want to make sure that your wallet isn't being affected too much. There are plenty of designer fragrances out there that are incredibly artistic. And then the same goes for the niche heads out there. If you're basically saying that you cannot touch designer fragrances because you're so sick of the world of confinement with the way that the masses find fragrances to smell appealing, that's your business, you know? You don't want to smell like Chanel. You don't want to smell like Dior. You don't want to smell like Paco Rabanne. Totally understandable. I 100% get it. But at the same time, know that we are such a niche community that most people could really care less. They're never going to know what a Xerjoff is. They're never going to even know what a Creed is for the most part. I think that I just kind of pick and choose my battles based off of what I feel for the most part. And I think that if you feel confident in what it is that you're doing and what you're wearing and how you're spending your money, then nobody can really say anything about it. So that being said, I hope you all enjoyed. Designer versus niche isn't really a topic for me. I think that there are masterpieces in both realms. And it's, again, up to you to decide what's important for your needs. So I hope you all enjoyed. This has been another Tunes review. I will talk to you all later. Have a good one.